Hey everyone, we're finally here. It's our final episode of our draft grade series. I'm with Nolan Kangas, as always. Nolan, how you doing, man?
Not too bad, man. Yourself?
Doing good, doing good. I mean, it's the last one we're doing here. We're gonna talk a little bit of course, the AFC and NFC South, but we'll also answer some questions about not just their teams, but kind of the rest of the season in general, and kind of how we thought this very weird, very unconventional draft went. I thought it was pretty interesting, but we'll get into that later. Nolan, let's get us started with the Carolina Panthers.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this video, but please make sure to like and share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to Lingo Sports. Now, back to the video.
They're going to start this new decade with a very new look. No Cam Newton, no Luke Kuechly, and no Ron Rivera. But they're kind of rebuilding. They're restarting. They got Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback now, and Christian McCaffrey, obviously, is probably going to be the bell cow running back. What do we think of their draft and how they are starting to rebuild?
Well, Jeff, you mentioned two offensive players, and it's pretty crazy. They didn't take any offensive players in this draft, all defensive players. And I wonder if Joe Brady, the new OC, kind of just said, Matt Rule, hey, I don't mind our offense right now. You just go fix that defense. And that's what they did. Derek Brown, my second best player in the draft, he is going to be the centerpiece of this defense moving forward. And they have some really nice pieces behind him. Uturgos Matos, I know you really like him, the edge rusher out of Penn State. Jeremy Chin, there was questions whether he could be the first safety off of the board. So that's a solid piece over top. And Troy Pride Jr., the quick 4.4 speed corner out of Notre Dame. That's going to pair up Dante Jackson, another quick corner they drafted a few years ago. So I like the direction of this defense moving forward. The one question mark I really had was their offensive line. You traded away Trey Turner, who was your best offensive lineman. And this was a team where Kyle Allen was the sixth most sacked quarterback in football, 46 sacks. He only played 13 games. So I think it would have been smart to take a lineman later in the draft. I get fix your defense because, this was a really bad defense last year. But there was still some pieces I would have liked to see. But for a rebuilding team, I don't know if Teddy Bridgewater, Teddy Two Gloves is the answer. I liked him in Minnesota, but I think he's kind of limited passing the ball. I like some of their weapons. DJ Moore's a really solid piece. Robbie Anderson was an okay signing. But for me, I think it was an A- draft. The minus just because, the offensive line is going to be kind of a mess for Teddy.
No, we have the exact same draft. Yeah, I think you're right. The offensive line is going to be tough for Teddy Bridgewater, but hopefully he can get the ball out quick, get it to Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, or whoever it is out there. Overall, I think, they had a really good draft, and it's kind of similar to what we were talking about. Like a lot of these coaches, I think, they're kind of more or less specialists, right? You got your Matt Patricia who knows the defense. You got Matt Rule and Joe Brady who know their offense. So they say, let's get all the talent we can get on the other side of the ball that we're maybe not as experienced with, and then we'll kind of figure it out as we go. Especially as new head coaches, they'll get there, but they got to learn to figure it out. I think they know that they're confident that they can scheme around a lot of things. And you know what? The Carolina Panthers do have a lot of talent, but you're right though. In the trenches, it's not very good. But I think as we've kind of noticed with this draft, the offensive line class wasn't very deep. It was very, very top heavy, and I don't think a lot of coaches were comfortable taking all those guys later. And they just thought, let's just get ramped up on the skill positions. We'll find offensive linemen some way, somehow.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that is mostly what a lot of teams were doing. So the Jags, or excuse me, the Panthers, they had 8 picks, and we go down to the New Orleans Saints, one of your favorite teams, Nolan. They only had 4 picks in this draft, and they've had some rough playoff experiences. I'm sure you're very well aware of that. But they did re-sign Drew Brees in the offseason to go at it with one more run with Sean Payton, and they got 4 picks. And I'm going to be honest with you, Nolan. You can love it, you can hate it. I think they nailed it. I think they killed every single one of these picks. The only reason why I won't give them an A+ is just because they didn't have that many. But they did a great job with what they had. They get Cesar Ruiz, get another offensive lineman, make sure there's less and less pressure in Drew Brees' face, and he can switch to guard or center. Always awesome. Zach Bond. I mean, look, you talked about it. That tainted urine sample is definitely a concern. But I love what he can do. He can probably play just about every single spot at linebacker that you want. He can rush the passer, he can cover, he can stop the run. He can do just about everything you want, and he's a smart guy. Yeah, I think that's a great pick in the 3rd round. And then Adam Troutman was probably my favorite tight end, my top-ranked tight end. He was, out of a somewhat weaker class, he was very, very good. He's athletic, he's fast, he's big, he's strong, he can catch the ball. Obviously, there's questions coming from Dayton, but overall, I think that's a really good pick, adding just another weapon to Drew Brees. I would, although, question maybe, hey, could you have gone with maybe another receiver? Like, why not get another one? Like, because Drew Brees, I think, definitely could benefit from having, another guy with Samuels and Michael Thomas. I think that'd be awesome. But hey, as a developmental guy, Troutman's good. And as another developmental guy, they got Tommy Stevens, the quarterback from Mississippi State. So far, from what I've seen, the limited sample size that I have gotten to see of him, looks pretty solid. So yeah, I gave them an A, Nolan.
Jeff, same grade. And it's hard for me to give an A to the New Orleans Saints. Not my favorite club in the world there, but I was kind of shocked with the 1st round pick, but it is a solid one. I think a lot of mock drafts had maybe a receiver or especially Patrick Queen. I think nearly every mock draft I had has said, they could get some depth at linebacker. Patrick Queen played at LSU, obviously LSU being in Louisiana, New Orleans there. So there was a connection here and there, but Cesar Ruiz is a nice piece. That offensive line had trouble with the Vikings pass rush in that playoff game. So why not, add some beef up front? So I like that pick. Zach Bond, like I mentioned, he was a faller for me when we did, our huge mock draft. He ends up falling to the 3rd round. There's their linebacker who can fill quite a few holes. And Troutman, you're right. I think it was a question whether him or Kmet was the number 1 tight end in the class. I feel like Drew Brees hasn't really had that, knock the door down, solid tight end since Jimmy Graham. And I think he could be that piece moving forward for Brees. So I like this class. There's not a lot of holes on this team or this roster. So I think they did a pretty solid job. And whether, Sean Payton and Drew Brees have another tough playoff run, they are set for, making the playoffs, in my mind, at least.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's been a lot of retooling. I think, they were one of those teams. They were talking about getting a quarterback. They don't there, but either way, they look like they can make a very solid playoff run for sure. Now, as for a team that has been struggling after, a couple years ago, they were in the Super Bowl, the Atlanta Falcons, Nolan. Their window, to me, seems to be closing pretty quickly. Matt Ryan's getting up there. Julio Jones is getting up there. They've got some good pieces. Did they do enough to, close the gap?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think they did enough. For me, there was a lot of talk of the Falcons moving up. I would have moved up, man. And I don't know why they didn't, because if they get Jeff Okudah or Derek Browningfeld to 7, I think there's that game wrecker or, at least someone to limit these star receivers in this division. Can A.J. Terrell and Isaiah Oliver do that? Are you going to limit Chris Godwin and Mike Evans? Are you going to limit Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Thomas? Probably not. And the rest of this defense is average at best. To me, Marlon Davidson is a nice piece. They obviously didn't pick up the 5th-year option for Takk McKinley. I liked Matt Hennessy because I think this offensive line had some issues last year. So, again, like I mentioned with the Saints, add some beef up front to help Matt Ryan. But the direction of this team is so questionable because it seems like it might be, Dan Quinn's last year because, you think of last season, it was abysmal how bad that football team is with all the weapons they have. This is going to be a good offense if Todd Gurley can stay healthy. It's the question mark with this defense. It feels like every offense in this division, maybe besides the Carolina Panthers, are going to be putting up a ton of points. But can this defense limit that? And I don't think they did enough. For me, taking a punter in the 7th, there's so many other holes, and there were so many players on the board. I don't care that you're taking a punter there. I don't know if they needed the safety, Jalen Hawkins out of Cal. It was just an average class at best for me. I think those young corners are going to struggle early on, and that was an issue for them last season, right? They were just getting burned in the passing game. I gave them a B-. In order for them to win games and maybe get in the playoffs, they're going to have to average 30 points per game.
Yeah, I think they're going to have a tough season yet again. They also lost Austin Hooper this season as well, Nolan. I think that A.J. Terrell, as good as he might be, he's going to have a great rookie season for things to, start to look up for them. Marlon Davidson, there was also talk about him struggling with weight issues there over at Auburn. So them a C plus. I didn't really love this draft. I think that, they look, unless they found some gems that we're not really fully aware of, I could see this team maybe drafting in the top 10. It looks bleak for them in a rough division that they're going to take quite a few bad L's in this one. And now yeah, go ahead.
Jeff, if I can get to it quickly, we're talking about all the trade-ups, and they were in love with Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw went at 13, and the 49ers wanted to trade back. So why didn't you just bump up a couple spots, take, a guy who a lot of people loved and was really high on a lot of boards, and say, hey, why don't I pair him with Grady Jarrett and have that front, 7 at least have two solid pieces. Now you don't do that, and now it's just Grady Jarrett, left on an island. Kind of in the middle there with, what production are you going to get from Dante Fowler Jr. and Takk McKinley, who's going to be pissed off playing for this Falcons team with no contract, next season. So it's just an interesting way the Falcons are being run right now.
It is. And I do kind of worry about, the players that, we're probably thinking a couple of years ago, hey, look, we're right there for a Super Bowl victory. And they just let it slip through their fingers. And now it's not looking good. I think they could even be in the Panthers spot where they were this past season. As for the final team now that we'll get to, I'm sure a lot of people have heard them, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They lose Jameis Winston. They get probably one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, and probably the greatest tight end of all time, Rob Gronkowski. Obviously more in the later stages of their careers. We'll see how good Gronk is. That's what I'm really curious about, is how good is Gronk right now, coming off of what he's been dealing with, obviously. But in this draft, I think Bruce Arians did a really good job saying, look, they have a few decent pieces, but there was a lot of holes to fill. There's very, very few holes that I don't think that they fill. I mean, and they also worked on their strengths as well. They get Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa. And you know what? No, I think the story is on him is he has all the potential in the world, all the athleticism in the world for such a big guy. Even at worst, he could play guard. I think he could be a really good guard, at least at minimum. And then later in the second round, when the Bears decide not to take a safety, they take Antoine Winfield Jr., my favorite safety on the board, in case you haven't heard. He's just incredible, and I think that he's going to help this defense in so many ways. And he can do a lot of things for you. He can stop the run. He can tackle. He can hit. He can play in zone or man coverage. There's very few things that this guy can't do, and I think he's going to be a really exciting player because they already have some good corners, and with some decent pass rush, they could do a lot with that pass defense. That much is for sure. The run defense, we'll see, but they also added one of our favorite guys, a potential steal of this draft, Tyler Johnson from Minnesota. Broke tons of records there. I think he's a great receiver. I'm still not exactly sure why he fell so far. But, man, he was a great pick there in the 5th round. I thought they did a great job. I gave them an A for this one because, for the most part, they filled just about every single one of their needs. Didn't draft a quarterback, but, hey, you know what? You're investing in Tom Brady, so let's go, right?
So I actually gave him a B+. You have the 3rd worst pass defense in football last season and the 4th most points allowed. I love Antoine Winfield Jr. too. He can't change the direction of this defense moving forward. They have a great pass rush. They have 2 solid linebackers in Levante David and Devin White, who they picked up in the draft last year. I love Tyler Johnson. I remember I said, Jeff, look at this kid's tape. He's going to be a steal. I'm shocked too that he fell to the 5th. I saw Matt Miller of Bleacher Report kind of said there's no, attributes that really jump off the board. To me, I don't care. He dominated the Big Ten and he killed Auburn in that bowl game. So for me, I like the draft quite a bit. Tristan Wirfs, the fact that he was a lot of people's number 1 tackle and fell all the way there. Is he going to play the right side or left side? I guess we'll see. It's going to be an interesting season for the Buccaneers. I know we'll get to that later, but you're having a lot of faith in Sean Murphy-Bunting and Carlton Davis to slow down the Stars. For me, their offense is going to be good, but Tampa Bay, they're going to be playing catch-up right out of the gate quite a few times. The offense is going to be sweet. The defense, yeah, you're going to stop the run quite a bit, but I'm worried about Michael Thomas, right? I'm worried about DJ Moore. That's going to be question marks for this defense and this team moving forward. But I thought it was a pretty solid draft overall, getting some guys who are falling. Of course, you think Wirfs falls to them, Winfield falls to them, Tyler Johnson falls to them. That's pretty solid there.
Yeah, they really lucked out on a lot of teams. Actually, like pretty much all the players that we mentioned, really just falling right in their lap. And we'll see what they can do. I think that they're sort of thinking that we got some great receivers. We're just gonna have a shootout with these guys and hope that the defense has been worked on and can improve. Only time will tell, Nolan. But we'll be right back, and then we'll be talking about the AFC South.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this video, but please make sure to like and share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to Lingo Sports. Now, back to the video.
Hey everyone, we're back now. Nolan, going into this offseason, the Jacksonville Jaguars, by all accounts, it looks like they're tanking for Trevor Lawrence this next season. But either way, doesn't mean that they can't build around him potentially. So how do you think that they did with drafting CJ Henderson with their first pick in this draft?
I love their first two first rounders. So obviously CJ Henderson, he's going to replace AJ Boye, and I think he's a solid corner. He was rising up draft boards quite a bit. Again, not a phenomenal tackler, but in coverage, he's really, really solid. And then their next first rounder, I'm pretty sure they were shocked to see he was still on the board, K'Lavon Chaisson, the defensive edge rusher out of LSU. He's just quick, athletic, nasty, good bend, gets around the offensive lineman really quickly. Moving forward, those are two really nice picks. And then I love me some of the Laviska Shenault Jr. if he can stay healthy. Because if you look at this wide receiver trio, it's not that bad. You think DJ Chark was a Pro Bowler last year, D.D. Westbrook, and then Shenault Jr., who can do a lot of things all over the field. Those are three smaller, quicker receivers, though. So then in the fifth, they get Colin Johnson out of Texas. He's about 6'5". He's going to be their 50-50 guy if he gets some playing time, that is. They already have Tyler Eifert now, the tight end. If he stays healthy, remember, he was a really solid player for Cincinnati in his early years and just couldn't stay on the field. So he's now in Jacksonville. I think he, if healthy, he's going to be their red zone target moving forward. But, some nice pieces. They give up Calais Campbell, Hamilton, the defensive tackle of Ohio State. He'll probably fill that hole. Ben Barch out of St. John's, Minnesota, another offensive tackle. He was rising up the boards there. So I think overall they had a really solid draft, but you're right, they have two first rounders again next year, having the Rams pick. So I think that first pick they're going to have is going to be a quarterback, whether that's Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and then that other one, maybe another stud defender, maybe another receiving weapon, maybe a running back, because Leonard Fournette's probably going to be out the door soon. So I think for the future, this is a Jacksonville team who we all thought their defense was absolutely crazy and going to be absolutely nuts for years to come. And they've started to decide we need a quarterback to build this franchise. And I think they're focusing on that next season, but not a bad draft at all. I give them an A-.
Yeah, I gave them a B- only because, in my opinion, just towards the end of the draft, it was okay, not great. There were some guys that other teams got. I think to myself, like, wow, like really, you didn't get that guy. There's a few, and we'll mention some of those towards the end of this, Nolan. But I think, like you said, that the top of the draft was great. K'Lavon Chaisson, perfect. Him and Josh Allen going to be those speed rushers off the edge. You get CJ Henderson, one of the best corners by all accounts. That was a bit of a shocker to me he went that high, but hey, good on them. I mean, I believe Isaiah Simmons was still on the board at that time, so that was a little bit crazy. But either way, you get CJ Henderson and you try and get something, when you lost a guy like Jalen Ramsey, a guy that's going to be tough to kind of, get back in terms of what he produced on the field. Laviska Shenault Jr., I do, my feelings on him is more like, what's the questions with all his surgeries, all his injuries? We don't really know. My questions for on the field, though, I'm not sure how great he is of a route runner. I think he uses a lot of his athleticism, his big body, his great hands. So he has the skills, and I think he probably has, the IQ to learn things at a good level. And like you said, with a really good receiving core, I think he can do some damage. That is for sure. But I think that this team, regardless, though, is probably going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And most likely, it seems like that's kind of what they're trying to do anyway. So they may not be too disappointed in that. The Indianapolis Colts, they let go of their first round pick for DeForest Buckner. That first round pick ends up becoming Javon Kinlaw, so that's interesting. Maybe they didn't really like Javon Kinlaw, but either way, they get an all-pro. DeForest Buckner is a great player there. But as we know, Andrew Luck retired last year and they needed to get a quarterback. Let's just go through their draft here. They got Michael Pittman Jr. with their first pick in the second round, and then Jonathan Taylor shortly after that. And then they pick up Jacob Eason in the fourth. I definitely think he's a project, but with a guy like Phillip Rivers there, I think Jacoby Brissett is actually more than a capable backup. This, that's a pretty good place for him to go, and then he can really, work on his game, work out the kinks sort of thing. And then, they address receiver, which is what we all thought they needed to do. They needed to get a wide receiver to go with T.Y. Hilton. They finally did it. And a lot of people, when I was looking into this, a lot of people think that Michael Pittman is so skilled. He's so savvy. He could have been a first-round pick in a lot of other years, with so many that we've already talked about. Could have been a first-round pick, but this receiving core in this draft was just ridiculous. That he looks like a mid-rounder, and I think they picked up a really good player there. Of course, Jonathan Taylor, who man, oh man, pairing him with Marlon Mack and that amazing offensive line. I can't wait to see that. I mean, I think to be honest, I might be drafting him in fantasy because he might have some great numbers there. I think he can catch a little bit better than some people think. But either way, I think that this was a pretty damn solid draft. I'm gonna give them an A- because for the most part, I think they addressed exactly what they needed to, and they got a few extra pieces to what I think is going to be a team that will compete maybe in 2 years, maybe not this next year.
Yeah, I like the grade. I gave him an A- too. I would have taken a cornerback earlier because you're really trusting Rocky Ya-Sin to be the number one shutdown guy as a really young corner in this division. Pittman Jr. is going to be a stud, 100-plus catches. I feel like Frank Reich and Ballard, the GM there in Indianapolis, really loved his game. And it was almost like no matter what, we're in the second, we need to take him because he's a game changer and he's really physical, too. If there's a fade thrown to him, he's getting that ball. If there's two guys in coverage, he's jumping up and stealing that ball. Jonathan Taylor, I love, big home run hitter. And I believe in this, past season, his junior year, he really wanted to focus on his pass catching ability. We didn't see too many catches, but there were still a few times he caught the ball and just took it to the house because that's what he does. So for me, I'd want to take him in fantasy too, and I hope he ends up being the number one back. He had a lot of touches. I think he was around 900 carries, at Wisconsin. So I don't think he'll need to be that workhorse as much in this offense with Marlon Mack still being there. Jacob Eason, like that pick, cannon arm, is going to be a project for the future, but all around it was pretty solid. It was just on the defensive side. I think they need another edge rusher, but I said this about the Giants the other day. The Colts have some money. Jadeveon Clowney. Wouldn't you want to love to torture Bill O'Brien and the Texans for 4 or 5 more years? Right? And I think the money keeps falling. I think Clowney thinks he wanted, 20+ mil, and then it was 17. I think he's going to sign somewhere for around 15 mil a year. He'd be perfect with the Colts because, Justin Houston isn't getting any younger. I don't know. To me, that sounds like a good plan for Indianapolis, but I thought it was pretty solid.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job. And Jadeveon Clowney is kind of a wild card coming to the season. We'll see what happens with him. That's going to be really interesting to whatever team he goes to. And I think the Colts would be a great spot. And we'll talk about those Texans a little bit later because I don't know if we're very fond of what they're doing down there, but we'll leave that for a little bit later. We'll start with the Titans now. The Titans that rode Derrick Henry to an AFC championship last year. Now Mike Vrabel really needs to improve on that 9-7 record to hopefully make another playoff appearance. Has a really good chance at winning this division. And the question is, did he do enough in this? I don't know. Nolan, what are your thoughts? If they draft Isaiah Wilson with their first overall pick late?
Yeah, so he was rising up the board. I actually had the Titans taking him too to replace Jack Conklin. When Andrew Thomas was on the left side, Wilson was on the right. So to replace, your right tackle is now in Cleveland. I think that makes sense. And you look at Logan Ryan, he's out the door now. Christian Fulton, a young corner. He was, a really solid piece at LSU. Got beat up a couple times by T. Higgins in that national championship game. But that's okay, right? Young player, he's going to develop. Him and Adoree Jackson for the future, I really like. I can't see Malcolm Butler hanging around much longer. To me, I thought it was solid. I gave him an A-, and I wonder what the record would have been if they started Ryan Tannehill in the beginning of the year, right? Because you saw Derrick Henry, once he had Tannehill, became the best running back in football and just started basically just running over people like a freight train on the field. So if they have that, for the foreseeable future, we know Derrick Henry got tagged, but I thought it was a pretty good draft. I don't think this team has too many holes. We know they traded away Jarrell Casey, but you know what? I think it was pretty solid. I do think there's still some holes, especially at the receiver position. They took Corey Davis. I think they took him 5th overall a couple years back. He's not their number one. That's A.J. Brown. I think he'll have another leap, but I gave him an A-. I still think it's probably, I see them coming out on top in this division. It's between them and the Colts, just because the Texans, we have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. I do kind of wonder what exactly will happen with Ryan Tannehill this next year. Will he regress? Will he get any better? I don't know, man. I don't know about giving him the contract over Derrick Henry. I know how the NFL feels about paying running backs, but regardless, man, he got you there. Excuse me. And now the question is, will they be able to do it all over again? I think that they probably will, Nolan. I really do. I gave them a B for this one. Obviously, like you said at the top, I think they did a really good job getting Christian Fulton, who was falling dramatically. I think that's a great guy to pair over there with with Mike Vrabel. I think that is exactly the kind of corner that they're looking for. A guy that can do pretty much everything on the field. He's athletic too. He's not undersized by any means, at around 6 foot. So overall, I think that they did a good job. This division is always up in the air. I think really the question is, can Ryan Tannehill really lead this offense? Can they take a step up to an 11-5, a 10-6 kind of team? I'm not so sure, but either way, I think that this division is probably theirs to lose either way. Now, as for the final team that we'll get to now, the Houston Texans, Nolan, we've been waiting to get in on these guys. They got off this offseason to a questionable start, trading DeAndre Hopkins for a 4th rounder. They get Brandon Cooks in the offseason, but this draft was almost anything but eventful in my eyes. I don't understand what's going on here by any means. I don't know what Bill O'Brien's doing. I don't know if he knows what he's doing. I don't know if you know what he's doing. I don't think anybody knows what he's doing, and I feel really bad for Houston Texans fans because you have a guy like Deshaun Watson who should be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Could be like one of those guys that we're looking at in those top 100 lists, near the bottom 20. He could be one of those guys, but now with DeAndre Hopkins gone, with Brandon Cooks, who's more or less a pretty injury-prone receiver, I just don't know what the future holds for them. I could see them being like a 6-10 team, despite how good Deshaun Watson is. Because you paid Laramie Tunsil, but what else is there to protect him? And they rely on him so much. He can get hurt so often. So I gave them a C, Nolan. It was really disappointing, and it's really disappointing to see them waste the potential of what could be a really good team. The only bright spot was that they got Ross Blacklock in the 2nd round. I think he's a great player. The question is, do you play him at nose? I don't think so. I think he gets swallowed up as a nose tackle. So I don't know. That's realistically the only good move. I almost want to give him a failing grade, right? I mean, it's a weird one.
Yeah, Jeff, I gave him a C too, and that trade of DeAndre Hopkins was obviously a head scratcher. You get David Johnson, you get a 2nd and a 4th, and the 2nd they used on Blacklock, which was their best pick. David Johnson is not going to do much in this offense. His best years are long past him. And you think about, we looked at their needs coming in. You needed a receiver. Okay, you took Isaiah Coulter from Rhode Island in the 5th round. He's their tallest receiver already at 6'3". So, who's going to be their guy in the red zone? Is it Brandon Cooks? Is it going to be Kiki Kute? Is it going to be Will Fuller, who's can't stay healthy? That's a question mark. We had offensive line. Charlie Heck in the 4th round. How good is he? Why didn't you take a guy earlier? They need an edge rusher because you have J.J. Watt, who isn't, I think his best years are, past him, and he can't stay healthy either. You traded away Jadeveon Clowney. You didn't even take an edge rusher in this draft. So to me, there was question marks all over the board. I think they're going to get destroyed in the secondary because, their corners aren't great at all. And we saw in that game, you were up 24-0 against the eventual Super Bowl champions, and your corners couldn't stop anything. It was just, Here's Travis Kelce, here goes Tyreek Hill, here goes Hardman, here goes this, here goes that, here's Patrick Mahomes going crazy, and you blow a massive lead in a game like that. And from that, it was just the whole entire team just collapsed. Man, you said 6-10. For me, I have 8-8 just because I love Deshaun Watson that much. I think he's that special of a player. He's going to be running for his life, again. Honestly, I'm not going to be shocked if he puts up MVP numbers, but their team's just not going to be very good because the defense isn't that good and the offensive line isn't that good. So, to me, another head scratcher, Bill O'Brien. If they miss the playoffs this year, he has to be out the door.
It is a crazy one. Honestly, the mismanagement of this team is boggling because it's very clear. It's very clear that they want to win. It's just that they're trying to change the culture, and in such a weird way that is unexplainable. Look, I like Ross Blacklock. I do. He's a good player. I think he'll be good for them. But literally none of their needs were addressed, and they're one of those teams that has been overachieving for a pretty long time, and it's mostly been because of their quarterback. And I don't know. I wonder if he'll even stick around if Bill O'Brien's there and the direction it's going. He says he's got his back, but I don't know, man. Your career looks bleak if that guy's at the helm, to be completely honest with you. So no, after that we'll get into some questions. Let's start with the NFC again. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in one of the toughest divisions in football. They got Tom Brady, they got Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Bruce Arians. They got these pieces everywhere. But this is a tough division to win, especially with the Saints. Will they win it? Will they come out on top?
I don't think so. I think they'll get a wild card. I just think the Saints in the regular season are such a strong team. I think Alvin Kamara will be a little bit more healthy this year. Michael Thomas is hands down the best receiver in football. Drew Brees is 41 years old. This is his final rodeo, and he's going to go out and have a terrific season. Again, he missed a couple games last year with that thumb, and Teddy Bridgewater stepped up pretty big. So, I can't see them losing this division, even though I love Tampa Bay's offense and Bruce Arians and the risk it for the biscuit offense is going to be pretty fun to watch. Their defense still gives me some question marks. It's going to be a tight race between the two of those teams, but I'll give New Orleans the edge.
I think it will be a race between the two of them, and I think it's going to come all the way down to the end. I think kind of to what you pointed to earlier, will their defense be able to keep up with the Saints? I don't know. I think those might be one of the more exciting matchups we can look forward to all season. Those two matchups, those two teams going head to head. Drew Brees, Tom Brady. That's pretty. I don't know. That sounds awesome to me. I can't wait for those. Now, as for their offense, though, I'm not sure they're going to run the ball very much. But will their passing offense rank in the top 10?
New Orleans or the Buccaneers?
Excuse me, the Buccaneers. Yeah.
I think their passing offense will rank in the top 10. That's for sure. I just think when you look at, I believe they had the number 1 or number 2 passing offense in football last season with Jameis Winston, even though he threw 33 touchdowns and 31 interceptions, or 30 interceptions, excuse me. This offense is literally throwing it downfield and trying to score as much as you can. If you look at Bruce Arians and quarterbacks in their first season with him, look, interceptions. Carson Palmer, the most interceptions of his career. Jameis Winston, the most interceptions of his career. I'm not saying Tom Brady's not going to throw the most interceptions of his career. He's going to be throwing it a ton. I still think he has not the arm he once had, but there's going to be some ducks he'll throw and some risky throws. But I still think with the weapons they have, and now Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, they picked up his 5th-year option, so they'll do 2 tight end sets. Keyshawn Vaughn, they picked him as their running back. To me, it was an interesting pick, and we didn't really touch on that really enough, but didn't have a ton of catches at Vanderbilt. But, if you're playing offense with Tom Brady, you're going to have to catch the ball out of the backfield. So I'll for sure say they're going to be a top 5 passing offense.
I think so. I think that they will be in the top 5. I just think they're going to score a lot of touchdowns. I think that's for sure. They're going to get in the red zone, no problem. What's so interesting to me, though, is going into this last season with the Bucs, Bruce Arians in the offense, it wasn't exactly looked at as an offense that favors tight ends at all, which is why a lot of people are saying, Howard's not going to be very happy. And then Rob Gronkowski comes in, and now you got 2 tight ends. So it looks like they're accommodating to Tom Brady a lot. So I actually kind of wonder how much will they be passing the ball down the field. I think, knowing Tom Brady, knowing how much of a chip on his shoulder that he has consistently, no matter what, he's going to look to prove a lot of people wrong. A lot of people have criticized him throughout his career, saying, he can't push the ball deep. Well, this is the offense to do that with, right? So I almost guarantee he's probably going to be trying to do that. I just think he probably wanted the tight ends because he likes that matchup for whatever reason. I think Tom Brady, when he thinks of football, he does think of it in like strategically in that sense. Everything's before the snap. He can really figure it out. I think with those two mismatches in the speedy O.J. Howard and the big, freak Rob Gronkowski, they can do a lot with that offense. And to be honest, I don't see a defense in that division that can really stand up to them either.
Dude, this offense is going to be, personally, what I think it could be is you just go four verts the whole entire time with the two tight ends who can, of course, stretch the field. Of O.J. Howard's got some speed, Evans, Godwin, and I would just have Keyshawn Vaughn or Ronald Jones the second, whoever's playing running back, run an arrow and just say, get open, I'll throw the ball, whether it's quick out to the running back, an option route from Rob Gronkowski, and everybody else go deep and get open. Like this offense is going to be wild, and I'll put my money on it. Say they're a top 5 passing offense and a bottom 5 rushing offense. It is going to be an interesting year for sure for Bucs.
Yeah, I think Tom Brady's shoulder is definitely going to be sore by the end of this one. Now, we talked about a little bit. Does Bill O'Brien have a job in 2021? So after this season, after it's all said and done, after he has a losing season like we think he does, do the Texans need a new GM and head coach?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a pretty coveted GM job, right? You think you have a chance to have Deshaun Watson, a generational quarterback. And I think there is some pieces on that team, but he's the main one. And honestly, I know Deshaun Watson said he has Bill O'Brien's back. If I'm Watson, you're thinking, I could get money anywhere I want to go. Why sign this, contract to be stuck with O'Brien and stuck with this offense when I could go, I'm just, Chicago, for instance, or go to any other team? I know, obviously you'd be praying for that, but I can't see them making the playoffs, which means to me, after all the mistakes O'Brien's made, I can't see him, being a part of this football team moving forward.
For the Chicago Bears to make up for their terrible mistake and not getting him, for all the teams that didn't take Deshaun Watson in that draft as, the best quarterback. I mean, clearly a franchise player. Clearly, I think he could be. There was a multiple Hydra MVP race last season, and he was part of that. And I think he really can be. He just needs a team to build around him just a little bit. I think that might be a consideration that some teams, any team that has him, might want to make in the coming seasons. As for the Jags, will they get Trevor Lawrence? Meaning, will they have the number 1 overall pick? Because I think we all assume no matter what, he's probably going to be the number 1 quarterback.
He'll be... To me, I'll say regardless, he's going to be the number 1 pick, whether that's the team that falls there or a team trades to go up and get him. Similar to, remember, the Jared Goff, Carson Wentz year where both the Rams and Eagles traded up. Do the Jags get him? I don't think so. And I'm trying to think who would be the worst team in football. Wow, that's a tough question. I'm trying to think of every single team in every division. And yeah.
It's not easy.
No. And because I'm trying to think, I want to say, the New York Jets, their defense has question marks, but, they supposedly now they got Denzel Mims and Sam Darnold. Are they going to be much better? In Miami, how much is to a play? And they still had a really good free agency class. When you look at the NFC, I can't see any of those teams. Maybe Washington, but I still think their defense is going to be too good. You know what? Let's go for it. I think Jacksonville, even though I like their defense and I like some of the moves they made, I'll say they'll be drafting 1st overall next season, just because eventually they're going to have to realize, Miami may have got their guy in Tua Tagovailoa, but they started winning some games and started pushing away from that number 1 pick. I will say right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars will own the number 1 pick in football. The record won't be that bad. Let's say 3 wins, but it'll be theirs to lose.
You mentioned them actually. I'm going to go with the New York Football Jets. I think that they're not going to look very good next year. And I think that, that means Adam Gase is likely gone. And generally speaking, new coaches are going to want their quarterback. They're going to want their guy. And regardless of how good you think Sam Darnold is, I don't think you can pass up Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence is in that mold of the John Elway, the Andrew Luck, the Peyton Mannings. He's those guys. It's the can't miss, pretty much undoubtedly best quarterback, best player available, highest rated player coming out of the draft. There's no doubt. And the thing is, he can run, he can pass, he's got an arm. That's he's pretty much John Elway. Whereas like Peyton Manning couldn't really run, Andrew Luck couldn't really push the ball that deep. He didn't have an absolute cannon of an arm. Lawrence does, and he's been doing it for 3 years. He's won a national championship. He can do just about everything unless he has a catastrophically bad season. I can't see him not being the number one pick, and I can't see. I think it's between the Jets and the Jags, but I'll go with the Jets because I just think that this team hasn't built around Sam Darnold properly. I think they're going to have a tough season.
Agreed. I wasn't crazy high on Sam Darnold. I know a lot of people were. They thought he was going to be the next Jesus Christ. But to me, if I'm the Jets and if you think Sam Darnold is the guy, if you have the number one pick, I trade out because I think there's so many holes on this roster. If you think, okay, let's move on from Sam Darnold and let's take in Trevor Lawrence. Still, you have a really bad offensive line. You have an aging Le'Veon Bell who averaged under 4 yards a carry last season. It's Denzel Mims and Brashad Perryman who are your 1-2 punch receiving core. So if I'm the Jets and I finish last, I say, all right, where are the calls? Let's get a couple first rounders. I want a player. I want this. I want that. That would make the most sense if you're the Jets. But there's going to be a few teams that eventually fall there. You think of Chicago, too. You have so many defenders. What if they say, we need a quarterback? Let's trade, you obviously wouldn't trade Khalil Mack, but, Eddie Jackson or something like Kyle Fuller, something like that where you say, let's move up. Let's trade a couple more first, even though you guys did it for Mack. So what would that be, 4 years without a first rounder? Yeah. And, end up taking a guy like Trevor Lawrence. But it'll be interesting come 2021.
It definitely will be. Now, as for teams that have made their future very interesting, who had the best draft and who had the worst 2020 draft?
So let's start off with the worst, Green Bay. I just think that there's just too many question marks. And now you have Brett Favre coming on Rich Eisen's show and saying Rodgers didn't really understand the pick. And Brett Favre, who's obviously close to Aaron Rodgers now, says, I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing with another team later in his career. To draft a guy who's going to be a backup for 4 seasons, we don't know how it's going to end up. That just blows my mind. And to get a running back who's a bulldozer but can't catch a ball, I'm not going to say to save his life because obviously he can catch a ball better than I can, but who hasn't proved it at least at the collegiate level to bring it to the NFL and to take carries away from Aaron Jones, too. It doesn't make sense. They didn't address a lot of their needs at all. So to me, they're the worst draft, this season. There was a few other bad ones, but they're locked in for that. For me, there's a few teams I could look at for the best. I would say the Vikings are up there. I still am not completely sold with the offensive line, and I think they maybe could have taken. To me, I'm just not completely sold on the O-line, which has been the kryptonite for years. Then you look at the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, you get the best receiver, in this draft in CeeDee Lamb. You get Trayvon Diggs. They didn't take a safety. So I'll go the Baltimore Ravens. And it's crazy to think a 14-2 team can have the best draft. Well, you get Patrick Queen, who's going to be, already people are saying, oh, he's the, Ray Lewis Jr., and he's going to be a stud for a long time in Maryland. So I think that was solid. J.K. Dobbins, you're the number one running team in football, and you get, one of the best running backs in college football to help you out even more. Mark Ingram, he's getting up there in age, but still he can contribute quite a bit. He got banged up in that AFC divisional game, and it was basically Lamar Jackson, go run wild and throw wild, see what you can do. So that was a huge loss, and now you have more depth moving forward with J.K. Dobbins. Matabuki, the tackle out of Texas A&M, you liked him quite a bit. They snag him to, basically pair, him right in the middle, which is going to be really solid. The Ravens are playing in the AFC Championship game. I'll lock it in unless something crazy happens. They killed this draft. And, without Ozzie Newsome, a new GM comes in and delivers again for this Ravens team that's always drafting well. So I'll give them the top grade, and I'll give the Packers, which is fun to say, the worst grade.
I will give the Seahawks the worst grade. I just think that they did not help their team. I think that they're definitely a playoff team. I think that's for sure. I think that Russell Wilson with still a pretty solid defense, you got yourself a playoff team. But however, they did an awful job. I don't like almost any of the picks. I like Jordan Brooks. I just don't know that I would have taken him there. I think he would have been available later. But either way, by far for me, the worst draft. There were some pretty bad ones, but I got to go with the Seahawks. As for the best, for me, it was between the Dolphins and how they retooled so well, and the Dallas Cowboys, who somehow just everybody fell on their lap. And they just, as usual, they just didn't overthink it. They took the best player that they possibly could, didn't necessarily go for the needs that they had, but they got CeeDee Lamb. They got a potential number 1 overall receiver. They got Tyler Baidez to replace Travis Frederick. Yeah. They filled so many holes. Neville Gallimore. They crushed it, man. They absolutely crushed it. I'm mad. I'm mad that they did so good. Like, that was unbelievable how they did so well. I think everybody was just going crazy when CeeDee Lamb was falling like that, and he falls right to them. It's just absolutely wild to me, Nolan. Now, as for our very last question of this draft grade series, in honor of one of your favorite players, Nolan, the Taysom Hill Swiss Army Knife Award. Who will come out of this one and be the best do-it-all, whatever the case is, whatever they're doing? Who will be the best do-it-all player? I got a few nominees for you. I got Isaiah Simmons, Lynn Bowden Jr., and Antonio Gibson.
So I was thinking Bowden Jr. That right when you mentioned this question, obviously drives me nuts. He'll already be better than Taysom Hill. He's quicker. He's probably a better pass catcher. Obviously, Taysom Hill didn't catch any passes at BYU when he played there. So I think him moving forward, he could throw the ball quite a bit when Kentucky needed him to. So he'll be the Swiss Army knife. To me, is there going to be teams that say, "Oh, we love what the Saints do with Taysom Hill"? And like when the Eagles said, "Oh, Jalen Hurts, we're going to use him as Taysom Hill." To me, I want to see the guy play quarterback. I don't want to see him line up at tight end and try to chip a edge rusher and then release. What does that prove to me? Every single time that Sean Payton takes the ball out of Drew Brees' hands, it's a worse play. I think almost every single time. Like, why would you say and have trust say, "Hey, Drew, you're 41 years old. Go line up, outside," and everybody knows he's not getting the ball. So then it's basically Taysom Hill, either run a quarterback draw up the middle, do read option with Kamara, or let's have Michael Thomas, the best receiver in football, run a seam and just lob it up for him. It drove me nuts. And I know I'm going on a tangent now, Jeff. So Bowden Jr. is my answer. But when the NFL released Taysom Hill's top plays of his career, and I swear to you, it was like 3 minutes, and they showed this highlights. It would be pass to Michael Thomas, best receiver, makes a terrific catch, and they show the replay 4 times just to drag out the time of the video. Mohamed Sanu has more completions and more yards passing than Taysom Hill. So don't tell me this guy, he's going to be the next future quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. It just drives me absolutely nuts. Bowden Jr., I think he could be a weapon, whether it's, they're going to be quick. The Vegas Raiders, him and Henry Ruggs, I think they could do a lot of things, but he'll be the biggest weapon, I guess.
I think Lynn Bowden Jr. might be the guy that keeps John Gruden in a job in a potentially rough season, because the Raiders and the Las Vegas fans are going to have so much fun with this offense. I think that they're going to use him in so many different ways that I think that literally they're so happy that he felt him. They don't have to worry about picking a great quarterback, because they can just mess around with Lynn Bowden Jr., who, by all accounts, we haven't really talked about it. He's versatile. He seems like a great character guy too, man. A guy that's willing to play basically any position, any time of day. I mean, I think a lot of people would be saying, "Hey, put me at the premium position. Don't put me at running back. Don't put me at kick returner," which he also did.
Yeah.
Put me at quarterback. Put me at wide receiver. Get the positions where he's not going to take the absolute worst hits on offense, but he's also, going to make the most money. But instead, he just did whatever Kentucky asked him to do. I think he's unreal. I think it's I think he's definitely going to be better than Taysom Hill for you, Nolan. And I kind of hope he adds. I mean, could you imagine in the future we have like a positionless offense where everybody can throw the ball, everybody can run the ball? I mean, I don't really think that that's a skill set everybody necessarily has, but we'll see. We'll find out. I think his career is definitely going to be an interesting one, Nolan. But that's it. That's all we got. That's all we got for everybody. I want to thank everybody for tuning into these ones. And of course, as always, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Lingo Sports every day. And of course, go look at the Pick Six podcast. We're coming back at some point when football comes back full time, and whether you're commuting to work when everything comes back to normal, there's nothing better to listen to. Come on, let's go. All right, guys, take it easy. Have a good one and stay safe.